when it comes to benchmarking progress, I want to tell people, okay, the person you're competing with is your past self, and the bar you're raising is for your future self. And if you can focus on that, it's a little bit easier to realize, all right, yeah, everybody has a different starting point. Everybody has a different pace. But if I could tell, actually, let me say this. I think so many people let their expectations rise with their progress. And so you set a goal today, you achieve it in 6 months, and then by the time it happens, it's almost a relief.
Yeah.
I didn't blow it.
Definitely.
There's no joy. There's no sense of meaning and purpose. You sort of expected it, and you would have been disappointed if it didn't happen. I think the way you avoid that is you get in touch with your past self. And you say, if 6 months ago me or 5 years ago me knew where I would land now, how proud would I have been? How excited would I have been? And if you keep that past self in mind, it's much easier to appreciate the strides that you're making.
I love that distinction you made as well between how comparison versus envy is the thief of joy. I think it's so subtle, but it's so nuanced and so powerful, because you're so right that I always think of it in the same way, that you either study someone or you envy them. And often the deeper you study someone, the less you'll envy them, because you'll actually realize how far they've come and what they had to get through and challenges they had. And you start getting the energy from that study to say, oh, maybe I have that within me too. And maybe I can find that within me too, because I have challenges.
I think for me, a really concrete example of that was I was terrified of public speaking when I decided to become a professor. Like, maybe it was the wrong profession. It's like, what are you doing here? But I remember even being a student and thinking about raising my hand in college, and I would start to physically shake. And by the time I got called on, sometimes I would forget what I was going to say, or I'd second guess it, or I'd stumble and stammer my way through it. And so the idea that I was now going to stand in front of a whole classroom or on a big stage was extremely daunting. So what did I do? I went to speakers that I really admired and started studying them, thinking this is going to help me. And the first one I picked was MLK.
Great pick, really.
Yeah, I mean, what a great way to get demoralized. So I watched his dream speech. I tried to take notes on things I could learn from him. I wanted to know, well, how did he get there? And so I start reading about it. He's 34 years old when he gives that speech. Like, I might as well quit. I cannot believe it's the greatest speech in American history, done by somebody who's, not even close to his prime. And I think if I had stopped there, I would have quit. And it would have been easy to walk away from MLK as just an impossible role model. And let's be clear, he is an impossible role model. I could work on public speaking for an infinite number of years, every minute of every day, and never come close to that. What was helpful, though, was then sort of rewinding and realizing we usually see our role models at their peak. And we don't have the starting point. We don't have the distance they've traveled. So how did MLK get here? And turns out he started entering public speaking competitions when he was 15 years old. That was 2 decades of practice. The year he did his dream speech, he gave over 350 talks. And so, if you think about the cumulative progress that was made, that's multiple lifetimes, of effort. So I think that's the kind of sort of analysis that we need to do, and I don't think most of us do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'll have to find it, but I think it was Usain Bolt who said something like, I've worked for X amount of hours to run 10 seconds or something like that, right? Like the idea of he's practiced for all these hours or months or years to run something in however long he did it in. I forgot the exact number, but it's so interesting what you're saying, and that backstory of that journey, that growth, the skills development, the hours, the struggle. 300 that year alone is
brutal.
That's insane, and I think it's fascinating. And you talk about this. I mean, I want to read from the book a bit, if you don't mind. So there are a couple of things that I picked out. So this is page 26 for anyone who's listening or watching right now. Page 26 of Hidden Potential. So, character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experiences of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. You're quoting Helen Keller. And then you go on to say that summoning the nerve to face discomfort is a character skill. The way you were writing in this book was so empowering, because it was almost like you were pulling from you know, I know, of course, everything's highly researched, everything's backed with science, but you were kind of pulling from a bit of a Martin Luther King space there, like the language in there of like summoning the nerve to face discomfort is a character skill. And so you're actually saying what we just talked about with MLK, that doing hard things, doing uncomfortable things, doing difficult things is actually where so much of this ability for hidden potential comes from. But all of us shy away from it. You know, all of us don't want to do it. We're scared of it. You becoming a professor, that's scary if you don't like public speaking. We avoid discomfort. We avoid awkwardness. We avoid challenges. How do we summon the nerve to face discomfort?
Well, clearly what I did was I started by thinking, okay, writing this book is going to be uncomfortable. There are going to be a lot of times when I'm going to get stuck, when I'm going to feel like this chapter is not working, and then my writing is not working, and then I'm not capable of being a writer. Why did I ever think I could become a writer? And then that just spirals out of control. And then the antidote to that is to think, you know what? Jay Shetty needs to be empowered. And also,
I love it.
I love this image of you getting empowerment.
I do get empowered.
I would never think of you as somebody who's in need of that. Like, you're out empowering lots of other people.
Always in need.
I guess for me, one of the things I learned from the research that I didn't know before, I think I always understood intuitively the idea that discomfort is key to growth. What I didn't understand was that actively seeking discomfort and even amplifying it was one of the ways that you could move toward your idea of progress. I kind of saw it as a necessary evil, something that happens, you know, when you're learning and you're struggling and you're tinkering with new skills. And I think what the evidence shows is that people who are actually given the goal to intentionally feel uncomfortable, this is done in some cases, like asking people to go on stage to do improv comedy and literally feel awkward on purpose. They end up growing more from that experience because they put themselves in situations that challenge them. And so I think that's what I had to do with public speaking when I was starting to teach. Is therapists talk about exposure therapy, and they often recommend systematic desensitization to say, all right, let's start, little seminar, and then, get to know a group of students well, and then you can kind of build from there. I didn't have time for that. So I went to the opposite extreme of flooding and said, all right, I'm just going to volunteer to give guest lectures in front of huge classrooms of hundreds of students who I've never met before for my friends' classes. I don't know why they let me in. I don't know why I just volunteered. Yeah, they were overly good friends, maybe. They were sacrificing the whole class for my growth, but extremely uncomfortable for me. And I remember, just walking in and feeling like I do not belong here. I'm not qualified. It was a massive case of imposter syndrome. But I think one of the things that happened when I put myself in that uncomfortable situation is I realized it's not really going to go worse than it did today. And reading through the comments, there were lots of suggestions for improvement and lots of criticisms, but there were also, little compliments about things people liked. I was like, okay, I can build on that. I can work on this. And I think, just coming in with the goal, I should put myself in a deliberately uncomfortable situation. It opened me to a much steeper learning curve than if I'd done the kind of, let me dip my toe in the shallow end and then sort of take off the floaties and learn to swim one step at a time.
Yeah, and I feel it's really interesting, right? Do you think there are those two approaches? Like, do you think from the research you've done and even your own personal experience, do you feel like it is either or? Like sometimes you just jump in the deep end and sometimes you should kind of dip your toe in and then walk in? Or do you think it's either or, like, or is wisdom knowing which one to try when?
That's where I was going to land. I haven't seen a good comparison of the two and when you should do each, but that's my intuition as well. Is